Time for the most complicated game possible for me to give a simple analysis in the context of this series of the first two review of. Because normally with these monthly PlayStation games that are free and available, I try to give just a quick recap of kind of what it's going to be like hopping into the game initially. So I have 2 or 3 hours experience with the game so far. But with Destiny 2 and Beyond Light, I have years of in-depth personal and professional and passionate experience and just a ridiculous backstory surrounding the game and the expansion especially, because I actually got hired to give feedback on the expansion before its release, and was probably in the top 5 people on the planet of knowledge on the actual expansion before it ever even came out. So part of this video will be some story time to give you a background on the absurd dynamic history that I have with this game and this franchise. And then I'll talk a little bit about what actually comes with Beyond Light. However, with the structure of Destiny 2, I'll mostly be doing a generic assessment of Destiny, because the expansion that's actually being offered for free doesn't have a ton of relevancy, and nothing that's relevant today is probably going to be relevant tomorrow. So I'll get into all of the different complicated things that are going on through the video. Let's start with some history. I've played Destiny since the game came out in 2014. Towards the end of Destiny 1's run, I started to cover it on YouTube, on the KWhip_8581 channel. Destiny was my favorite game at the time, and it kind of absorbed the channel and became its main focus, and that channel actually did very well. It was extremely try-trying and got a lot of attention early, plenty of people thinking I was gonna blow up, and I had created it when I was only 17. But there was plenty of things that were also draining about the game, and I had really a love-hate relationship with it. This would only be compounded with Destiny 2, which would have a turbulent year 1 release, of which I would really just walk away from the game and stall out the growth of that original channel. I would come back to Destiny 2 later, resulting in a buildup of hundreds of videos covering Destiny, primarily in PvP, which is really just one kind of subsection of the game. Then in the summer of 2020, I ended up getting hired by Bungie as a gameplay specialist, which is a role that about 3 people get to do per year, where I would play the upcoming expansion early and give feedback on what the player sentiments and experience would be to help guide plotizers in making it as player-friendly and optimal as possible. I was extremely lucky to have this opportunity, and it was wonderful working there, but I knew from day one, oh, this is a disaster. I would end up telling people very high up in the company that I was working on the part of the game that was going to make me quit the game, which was a new section of abilities that was being introduced with Destiny 2 Beyond Light called Stasis, which would slow, stun, and freeze players to make them completely incapable of acting and just frozen. A disastrous thing to incorporate into something with incredible gunplay that has great pacing. So from the first day I got my hands onto the game until my last day about 3.5 months later, I was trumpeting to just stop and stall and pull back stasis as much as possible, and I did all I could, but I was too late. And now years later, in the first month that I decide to make these recaps of all the PlayStation monthly games, it's being offered for free. Which, if you are unaware, the base game of Destiny is free right now as well, because how it's currently structured, anyone can play for free. However, they have a seasonal pass structure that you can pay for, and they also come out with expansions that provide new content. Really, the last one you need to pay attention to for Destiny 2 is Lightfall, which will be coming out Hardest 28th, which ideally is tomorrow. And these expansions often bring massive changes to the game, as Bungie does not update this game super frequently. So it's a pretty big challenge to talk about what things are gonna be like if you want to hop into the realm of Destiny 2. Because what's being offered for free in this expansion is no longer very relevant, then a lot of what is currently happening in the game is gonna be changing immediately with the arrival of Lightfall. And if you're wondering about the current state of Destiny, I actually, for once, don't know extremely well. I've taken about a year off with very spotty playing since that time. However, I did play a couple days ago for about 3 hours to give a little taste of what's going on. So really the best thing to do is just talk about Destiny generically and give you a sense of what's good and bad about it to see if you want to give it a try. At its core, Destiny is a game with wonderful gunplay and abilities that have the potential for amazing creativity and variety, with so many different weapons, weapon types, perks that go onto weapons to make them behave differently, exotics which all do their own special thing, and multiple subclasses and armor sets that can customize the way that you play the game and give you the opportunity to spread joyful chaos throughout the worlds you're in. And the worlds that you're in look rather spectacular. The environments are extremely well done and can be truly lavuliful, filled with satisfying enemies to combat, and so many different encounters of different paces and styles that there's just about something for everyone to find engaging in Destiny. Between more standard PvE with campaigns and strikes, where you can casually shoot some aliens and have a good time. Or if you want more puzzle-oriented, coordinated mechanics, there are dungeons and raids that can make you feel like you're doing things that are a lot more extraordinary and grand while working together with a team. Or there's the PvP with solid pacing that will regularly keep your attention, wrapped up with a healthy priority on precision, with every single activity working towards grind and progression and the possibility of improving your gear. There are so many great elements to this game that it feels like if Bungie ever got the recipe right, it would be practically flawless. But it's never really been that, and there's always been some clear flaws. It's always lacked a pretty compelling story, and the characters have always been weak and hard to care about despite being around for 9 years, some of them. They actually killed off the only one that was ever interesting. Pass responsibility at use for Cade 6. Many parts of the game can get bogged down by monotonous tasks and tropes that regularly come back. Although the game is free right now too, it is a rather pricey option compared to a lot of things out there. If you're really into the game, you can expect to be paying almost the price of a new game just about every year, with expansions and passes that come out through that time. And that's if you're avoiding the microtransactions that Bungie has been trying to push for several years at this point too. But the biggest issue of Destiny has always been balancing, something that naturally would happen with such a complex game with so many different functions, all trying to connect to one central source. It would be very difficult to find the right blend to get everything to be functioning properly. But Bungie has regularly displayed poor decision-making, prioritization problems, inconsistent attention to different areas of the game that make things always just seem kind of off and always worse than they should be, leading to an endless state of frustration of how great things could be but never are. The clearest example of this being PvP. I gave it a couple runs when I was back, and your boy's still pretty nice on the sticks. And I saw plenty of familiar issues like the connectivity in this game, and this is an extremely regular thing in just lobbies across Destiny. And even with it finally having 60 FPS on console if you have a next gen, it's still a really choppy, fragmented game. But PvP entirely, they haven't made maps for years, with maps being one of the biggest problems with the game. Weapon and subclass balance is just about always disastrous. In a game that has so much variety and different things the players can do, just about always gets pigeonholed into one option that everyone just abuses because it's so clear. And the ultimate freedom that players should be able to express through their gameplay is always constrained by the poor, unattentive, and irregular balancing efforts made by Bungie that typically brings a step forward and 2 steps back. I can still see a lot of those things that I initially loved about the game, but there's so much that is severely toned back, making the game feel like a shell of itself. Like he's a ghost. So there is some greatness to Destiny. You could play around with it for a bit and find so much that's going to be an omerant time for you that you absolutely love. As you get deeper into the game, there's gonna be more things that you'll find that you love too. However, if you get fully entrenched into it, it's probably gonna be an endless cycle of disappointment and frustration with the shortcomings that just never seem to stop. I'd love to see them finally find the right mix in the game to feel like it's finally optimizing all the potential it has, but I've been waiting like 8 years for that. I would sure say it's worth a try and that you can find some stuff you'd like, but careful not to get too attached. And to do a quick cover of Destiny 2 Beyond Light, the specific expansion that's going to be coming with the hardest monthly game that you should download. I mean, there's no reason not to, it's just additional parts of Destiny, essentially. You'll get a campaign that helps you to unlock your darkness powers, a new thing for Destiny at the time, which has some interesting elements. However, the main antagonist of the story and kind of everything that plotizes with that will be somewhat irrelevant and not matter in the grand scheme of things. The destination that this takes place on is Europa, a icy and snowy planet that is pretty interesting, especially as you discover some of the secrets within it. However, the density of enemies and lack of intense mob-filled activities is a large detractor from the destination as an entire. The raid that comes along with this expansion is rather fun, really enjoyed it. It's not overly complicated or challenging, so it's one that you can pick up fairly quickly. There's also some exotic quests that are pretty interesting as far as Destiny missions go. So the expansion's alright, however there's already been another one after that with Witch Queen, and another one coming out on hardest 28th of Lightfall, so it does not have the relevancy to be very important at this point. Hence why I mostly am just talking about the game in general. As for me, I feel like I got out of the Matrix. I'll maybe keep my eye on it, experience it now and then, but I don't want to live there no mo.